Okay, well, I'm going to talk about a genre that I don't talk about often, and I think this would be a thriller. But I'm going to talk about Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. Red Dragon. This is book one in what has later come to be known as the Hannibal Lecter series. Most famously, Silence of the Lambs, which is book two, with the famous movie with Anthony Hopkins. And there's been a movie of this called Red Dragon from, I think, the early 2000s, starring Edward Norton and I believe also Michael Mann's Manhunter from the 80s was based on this book, which is from 1981. And before I get into the book, I just want to say I might have an ear infection or something, so it's hard for me to hear out of this ear, and I can't tell if my voice is different. You know, when you're having hearing issues, your voice might do different things because physiology, whatever. But yeah, I want to talk about Red Dragon. So, to talk about me first, of course, that's the main topic of every video, me. I was superbly engrossed by this book. Now, we have this edition, this copy is, to me, it puts me off because it's in the mass market paperback size, but it's a little taller, and it has this fake floppiness that sends a message to me that this is a book destined for an airport magazine rack, or destined for a Target books aisle sale, where it screams trash, this edition. And this book is not trash. I enjoyed it so much. I thought it was awesome. But the copy that I have, Berkeley, this is an imprint of Penguin apparently, but it must be their trash imprint. Maybe I'm being harsh, but it's just giving off trash to me. But Red Dragon, let's talk about it. It's 450 something pages. I read it in less than 2 days. I think I could have read it in a tiny bit over a day, but it just sucked me in. And this is the story of it's not necessarily a detective, but an investigator, formerly of the FBI, named Will Graham, who is brought back into employment because he's the best in the business after there are murders in Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. And it seems to be a serial killing because of similarities within the two crimes. And Graham is special in that he's adept at solving serial killings. He's one of the foremost experts in the United States. So he is recruited by his former boss, Jack Crawford of the FBI. But what sets Will Graham apart is that in order to solve the crimes that he solves, he has to live them. He has to understand the victims, and he has to understand the killer. And from there, he has to understand how the killings happened, and he has to live the entire thing. And by live, he has to experience it in his mind, how things went down. And not his downfall, but his crutch is too much empathy, which led to his early retirement, in addition to something else that happened to him physically. But his main crutch is that it's too much to not only to have to deal with these types of heinous acts, but to have to live through them yourself as if you perpetrated them. It's too much for this guy, Will Graham, and he has to live with that guilt of not that he did any of these crimes, but that one, he was too late, and two, there's always going to be more crimes. He just had to get out. And this novel is the first novel in this universe where, I don't know if Will Graham's in any subsequent novels, but he and Crawford and a team of experts are going after a criminal known as the Tooth Fairy or the Dragon. And Thomas Harris, the author, I didn't know this beforehand, but he was formerly a crime journalist of some sort, and he did other related crime writings. So it makes sense. He is so good in the, I don't want to call it police procedural because that summons to mind bland, repetitive detective shows like cable TV. But he is so good at police procedural happenings and duties and forensics and how the bureaucracy works and visiting crime scenes and tracking down leads and such. He's so good at crime writing, I think. I'm not an expert reading in crime, but I think he is so good. Where Harris was not great, I can somewhat say romance. There's barely any romance in there, but if I go a bit higher than romance, he's not good at male to female communication. Any dialogue there, poo-poo. I'm gonna poo-poo that. It was not good. But, or any personal dialogue dealing with family relationships, any of that, not good. But any dialogue related to solving the crime or talking about the crime or anything related to crime, he's lights out, spot on, very good. And that leads me to, I think that, but we'll talk about Hannibal Lecter. We'll talk about him now, actually. Hannibal Lecter is barely in the book. He's an unnerving, eerie serial killer that has a past with Will Graham, the protagonist. And he's intellectual and erudite and creepy, of course. I can't remember if there's any mention of cannibalism, but if so, it's not a focus. But from this first book, the first ever mention of Hannibal Lecter ever, that you don't come to see how he could be such a worldwide cultural phenomenon, except through the performance of Anthony Hopkins. Now, I haven't read Silence of the Lambs, so I don't know if he stepped it up in Silence, the book, but it's not easily apparent that he is going to be one of the greatest villainous characters in modern history. And that's mostly, I think, Anthony Hopkins is doing. But what I really wanted to talk about was the primary antagonist, the Dragon, or Francis Dollarhide. Now, I think it is true to say that most of the time, when you're talking about a villain, it could be a serial killer or any type of antagonist in a book, the person or thing or whatever it is scarier before you meet it. When people talk about this person or place or object, it is easier for the mind to imagine something worse than it is. And authors often fail at coming through with a character that is equally menacing as that which they had brought about through the imagination. And I think Francis Dollarhide, the dragon, the villain of this book, is we get a lot of perspective from his point of view in this book. And he is a deep, I don't know if he's an interesting, freakish, horrifying, but very human character that he was scary and pitiful at the same time. He's born with a hair lip, and he had a very bad childhood. Not a very bad childhood, but it was some might call it a traumatic childhood, not being treated like equals of his peers, and being neglected by his mother and treated poorly by his grandmother. But I guess I would say he's a complex character despite his easily diagnosable psychoanalytic flaws. And the connections to William Blake are interesting. I haven't read any William Blake, and I wasn't familiar with the painting in question until this book, but this cover is based on a William Blake painting. But yeah, a great villain, a great plot. Of course, the Hannibal Lecter tie is still delicious. And Will Graham is I don't know if he could have been more sympathetic. He's kind of, it's hard to say if he should be sympathetic or not, because he's kind of a tough guy to deal with because of the way he feels about things and the way he treats other people. But yeah, this was an utterly engrossing book. And I don't have Silence of the Lambs or the other two sequels, but I would love to read Silence of the Lambs now. And of course I want to rewatch the movies. But yeah, this is kind of, I picked this up at Goodwill recently, which is why I read it. But I have not read a book so quickly in recent memory. In the last 2 years, I don't think I've read a book so quickly as I have Red Dragon. So, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.